right, the floor is open. Tell me what you're noticing. What's happening? And you can signal me either by raising your hand or unmuting yourself. So Leslie, please unmute and speak.
Hi. So I have a question from your talking about compassion. I've gotten very close with somebody who has had tragedies in his life in the past 10 or 15 years and also just lost his mom. And I feel such compassion when he's talking to me about his tragedies or the loss of his mom, and he's not crying, but I am. And I say to him, I don't know if these are my tears or your tears. And so my question is, do you think that is losing equanimity?
I don't know. A similar thing happens to me, Leslie. You know, I notice it that sometimes I'll cry when other people aren't, or I'll get angry when they're not getting angry. And I think there's something really unjust about what they're describing. And I think there's something about human neurology that does that. Sometimes you feel someone else's feeling. I'm not sure that's entirely healthy, but I don't know, actually. I don't actually know.
Mm-hmm.
I do know the power of giving someone back their feelings as a therapist sometimes to, just kind of notice, hey, I notice myself getting a little angry for you. Where is that in you? Or what, something like that. I've seen the power of that. You, however, are probably not this person's psychotherapist. So you haven't been handed the baton that way to run with it. So I don't necessarily recommend that. But I sense that you're being yourself. And I don't think it's doing harm. Do you think it's doing any harm?
No, but when you mentioned equanimity and compassion, I was thinking about it, and I just wondered, what your answer would be. No, I don't think it's doing harm. It's just very interesting to me that I am crying for someone else who is not crying.
Yeah. It's like you're willing to let your own heart break. It's not even willing, is it? It's not
exactly.
about no. I need to say that clearly. It is not at all about will.
No, I could never stop it. I wouldn't want to stop it.
Yeah. You could probably tighten up and maybe stop it, but
I don't think I could. I don't think I could really. I've never done that in my life. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to even learn how to do that.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
I'm kind of edging towards saying I don't see anything wrong here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Anna, you can unmute.
Thank you for that absolutely beautiful talk. It's really, there was a lot in there. A lot of things about everybody's got some really difficult thing they're dealing with and they can't make it stop or go away. And so how do we just sit with it? How can we be present with it without resorting to behaviors that attempt to push it away? So that was just really great. I wanted to share what my practice is of upekkha, what the meditation is that I do in case it's helpful to anyone. I spend like about a month I have this meditation cycle that I go through and I do something different every week. And when I get to the Brahma Viharas, I spend the first week on upekkha and then it stays. Whatever the next Brahma Vihara is, I always start with upekkha. So the meditation that I do for it is to look at, it's supposed to be 3. If I'm during the weeks where like I'm adding one of the other ones, I'll just do 2 things that I feel very strongly about that are dichotomies. And sometimes it's it could be the 4 winds, like we talked about last week, gain and loss and pain and pleasure, all that stuff. Or it could be just like living in the country versus living in the city, or like people who are parents versus people who aren't, or whatever it is, like whatever like thing I'm having thoughts about. You know, it's great because then you look at it and you go, well, what do I currently feel about this place? Well, I feel that living in the country is superior. Well, let's look at how like it could be inferior. So whatever it is, you kind of like take the opposite perspective and look at it just to play around with your mind. And then you go, wait, you get to a place where it's like, I don't feel very strongly either way. If it could definitely be a great thing or it could definitely be a terrible thing, maybe it's neither. And then you sink into kind of the neither and it opens up and that becomes the equanimity. Like, and yeah, like you're supposed to go back and forth, see the negative of the positive one, see the positive of the negative one, and keep going back and forth until you're like, either way. And that's the meditation that I do. It's pretty
All right. Thank you.
It takes some like forethought to be like, what will be the topic of the day?
Yeah, you kind of watch yourself to see what the mind is polarizing around, and then use that as your equanimity practice. I like it. Thank you. All right. So anyone else? Hop in there. Anyone had a disastrous week with regard to equanimity? It's fine for that. Absolutely fine.
Well, I wouldn't say it was a disaster, but right before we got I jumped on the call, I was on the phone with my daughter, who, when she was home over Christmas break, had a little bit of an accident, kind of took the mirror off of her car. So she has to come back to get it fixed. And she's having a rough time at school and she's overwhelmed. And she was really looking forward to coming home this weekend to get her car fixed, but the part's not here. And so there's no reason for her to come home. And so we had to call and have that conversation. And when I sat down, I was still feeling all of her overwhelm and her disappointment and all of the things. And I'm going to admit that I sat here and spent like the first 10 minutes thinking about, so how can I fix this? Like, oh, I'm not supposed to fix it. And I think in the 10 or 12 years that I've been sitting in your class, it all just keeps coming back to that whole thing about, oh, this isn't mine to control either. Damn it. So that's my equanimity story for tonight.
Okay. So there's a great phrase, equanimity phrase. This is not mine to control either. I like that. That could be a phrase to, keep you in balance. And I appreciate, Sandy, the story, because I identify with that, especially when it comes to one's family, the desire to fix, to make it smooth everything out, make it okay for everybody. And it takes a lot to say, that's not mine to fix.
I'm writing that down.
All right. Yeah, write your own words down.
What was the other catchphrase? Now it's killing me. What was the other one? They were like, this is definitely what equanimity is. It's anyone? Does anyone remember? Or do you remember?
Which of a phrase?
Toward the end, you were saying like, it's this.
I'm always saying it's this, and then going, something else is it.
It was really good, but now
really good. I can't take it away. Is that the one you were thinking of?
that's good.
I offered that one. Maybe it'll come to me.
He says, I really want to be here for this.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay, that was it. Yeah, yeah. That's
Or
been
not knowing what should be happening here.
yeah. Oh, yeah, the one about should. I don't know what should be happening here. Thank you, Nancy. All right, write it all down, folks. Put it on your bathroom mirror. All right, great. So Diane, go ahead and unmute.
Just a thought. A couple of weeks ago, listening to an interview with Daniel Goleman, who I think 30 years ago wrote Emotional Intelligence.
It's been 30 years now. Oh my goodness.
I think he said 1995. And as he was describing, he sort of recapped, I guess he has a new book out, which is why he had the interview, but he recapped, I think, 4 things, which was self-awareness, empathy, compassion, and I think one was resilience. And as he was discussing the resilience, I was thinking about equanimity. It's acknowledging that we feel all the feels, but how do we recover from them? So I think when we're sitting with people who are suffering, and if it is part of a profession and you've got one eye on the clock, unfortunately, so how do you recover and move on? But I think there are times when it just takes you away. And it's just extremely uncomfortable, but can you recover from it? And I think when one is able to recover from it, I think you're better able to sit with it. It's just something I was thinking about listening to his interview. I think he did study, he never talked about all of this being informed by Buddhism, but I know in his early career he studied. I don't know much about him, but
it's all informed by Buddhism.
Right, and he started with lists
for that. He's part of the whole movement to translate it into things that wouldn't be considered a religion. That wouldn't be a barrier for people to learn who identified with other religions. If they thought it were Buddhist, they would, but so much of Buddhist psychology is like electricity. There isn't like Buddhist electricity or Christian electricity. It's just how things work.
Mm-hmm.
So he's one of the people who I think has done a good job of just talking about electricity, just talking about how things work and how they don't, and how knowing that can make a huge difference.
Right, and how he's suggesting it doesn't have to be innate, it can be learned.
It can be learned, yes. Yeah. Which is a very powerful idea from the Buddha. There's a skillfulness to this living. There's a skillfulness, and you can learn it. And here we are. All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's an excellent book. I recommend it. I've never read it. I often recommend books I've never read, but I kind of know what's in it anyway. So I just I know the reputation of it. So it's probably a very good book. Emotional Intelligence, or whatever he's written since. I think he's written a number of books since. One of those people like John Kabat-Zinn. All right, where else shall we go tonight, folks? Where shall you take us? You have the power with your little raised yellow hand to take us on a journey into your experience. Okay, Nancy.
Yeah, so your talk sheds light on something that happened to me 13 years ago. I know I shared with you a little bit at the time, Mark, like I had this amazing opening, I call it my mini enlightenment that just descended on me for several weeks and months in 2010. But one of the things, a whole bunch of really amazing things happened during that interval. But one of the things that I always has stuck with me is I was listening to the radio, and there was at that time this big tsunami in Japan. And how I would normally like relate to a story like that is kind of, yeah, I might literally turn the radio off or at least sort of wall myself off in some way. But I was so open-hearted at this time. So they're talking about this tsunami, and I felt the terror of these people. And I felt the sorrow, really, really, like of losing your home or losing your loved one. Um, and these like swept through me like this huge, huge wind. And at the same time, I felt like my capacity was limitless. Like um, it was fine. It was fine in some sense, you know. It's like I experienced terror and I experienced grief and sorrow, and I still had more room to go. And I hadn't really thought about it as equanimity, but your talk today got me thinking about that. Um, I see that what you're saying is right, that equanimity is part of this like open heart.
It's like the heart that's so big that even tidal waves and terror fit inside and don't actually disturb it in the way that you think it might. You know,
Right.
there's still peace while you're experiencing the terror of people living through a tsunami. And
Right.
the conceptual mind can't quite get around that experience. It thinks that if you're filled with terror, you can't possibly be also filled with peace and love. And yet you can. That
Yeah,
is,
I
that
didn't
is what the heart can do. Yeah.
I didn't have words for it until your talk tonight.
All right. Good. Sometimes words are helpful, but the direct experience is more helpful. You know,
Yeah.
actually knowing what the words refer to is much more important than just having the words. Thank you. That gave a great example of what I was talking about, of compassion grounded in equanimity. You know, what we are is so amazing, so vast. What the heart is, we don't give it credit for what it actually is. You know, these moments, and sometimes they just peek through for a while, as you were saying, Nancy, you know, that, and then they get eclipsed somehow by life. But there are these moments sometimes when we actually see the vastness that we are, and the capacity, the tremendous capacity to be connected and to be with things, that is beyond all reason or contrivance, you know? And it's sometimes the case, you know, if you read a lot of Buddhism, it sounds like we can contrive this all. But you know, it's like all the practice, all the kind of doing and becoming skillful. It does help, it does add up, but then there are these moments when something just like pokes through, something just like the heart just opens and reveals itself. And it has a bit of a mystery to it. It's not in our control, at least the way we think we are as egos. It's not something we will to happen. But it reveals itself. And I suspect in everybody's life, there are these glimpses, there are these moments, if we pay attention to it, where the heart just reveals what it's capable of. And then our minds close it back down again, I have to say. That's part of the difficulty. But there are these moments when it's like the sun comes out from behind the eclipse, or the moon comes out from behind the cloud. And all we can do is kind of bow. Oh my, okay, wow. All right, I guess we're just about up to our time here, so I'm not going to take anybody else. And thank you all. It's a very rich discussion tonight, I think. Thank you for everything you brought, everything you shared. And I'm sending you armed with tools to do with your equanimity practice this week. So best to you, and we'll talk next week.